Before we begin, I'd like to give a quick disclaimer that these are my opinions only. I promise I do not think I'm better than anyone else or an art teacher. This is just me trying to spew advice into the absolute void of the internet, hoping to guide someone in the right direction. And with that, here we go. Let's say that this is you. You sit down, or you're ready to sit down to make some art. You maybe have a cup of tea in your hand, and you are all ready to go. But first, you need to get some inspiration on maybe popular sites like Pinterest. But you start looking at all these different artists, you start looking at their different art, and you wonder, what sets your art apart from the others? Well, not to be a middle school teacher, but it's all about shape language, color theory, and the feeling and emotions that you have behind your art. This all encompasses an art style, which is supposedly the pinnacle of being an artist, or a successful one. I mean, that's what the media says. But if you look at popular artists like Fizzy Pop and Jonan Vasquez, you immediately can recognize their style. I mean, think of different cartoons even, like Fairly Odd Parent and Adventure Time. It might seem hard to be original in today's oversaturated internet, but there are a few ways to consciously develop a style to be more unique to you. So we're going to study the Adventure Time style first, and we're going to draw 3 different versions of it. We're going to draw the original style, we're going to draw the push style with the exaggerations, and I don't even know if I can make it more stylized, but we'll try. And we're going to draw the opposite of the style, just so we can show the difference and how unique it is as a whole. I didn't actually like how the normal and push turned out. I actually didn't like how any of them did, but this was a really quick drawing, or I guess 3 drawings, just to kind of play around with the Adventure Time style, notice things that I haven't before. And I played around with a couple different things, but I ended up drawing my character Juniper. The first one went by really fast, and so did the second one, because the original style is, it's not extremely simple. Like, there still is expressions and certain clothing choices, but in the push style, the colors were extremely harsh against each other, and they're really, really intense. But the opposite style, I wanted to do the opposite. Instead of doing the extremely simplistic, like very tiny eyes, I didn't even give the pushed one a mouth because we're just trying to push it. And so the opposite, I gave her a cigarette just because I feel like the overall vibe of the drawing changes when you add a character doing something edgy, or I guess quote-unquote edgy, that people usually associate it with adult content. And so I'm coloring it in way less saturated. I'm bringing it down a lot because the shadows have to be harsh, and it has to have very rough line art, and it's a very intense style. This is not my normal style that I like to draw in, but there we go. These are the 3, and I'll give you some time to look at them. Looking at the Adventure Time style, you can certainly tell that this style is unique. That was obvious before. What if it's not so obvious? I mean, plenty of people have art styles that sometimes don't stand out against others. And that's okay. It's perfectly okay to have an art style that might look a little like someone else's. This isn't a bad thing. But to have a style that stands out, like, the big artists of the world, we need to take a look at what makes up a style, specifically. I know I talked about it a little bit, but what is color theory? What is shape language? Well, there are a few components, really, of each one. But the main color theory, shape language, character design, and storytelling, this is what makes up a style, an art style, because art doesn't just encompass visual arts. There's also writing and the story that you want to tell with your characters. That also is a big, important thing. There can be separate videos on character design and storytelling, since those are very specific skills. But color theory and learning how colors work together and learning shape language, that's something that I think that we can cover in this video. So let's talk about a speed paint I did a while ago. This is a great example of a color theory video because I had to really think about how the colors work together, because I wanted this to be a very colorful illustration. This is supposed to be some sort of alien character, so I wanted the colors to feel different and very vibrant. And so the character design I can go over another time, but as soon as we get to the coloring stage of this illustration, then it's important to talk about how I picked the colors, because you can't just slap on a bunch of very bright saturated colors and say, hey, look what I did. See, the colors that I chose weren't exactly saturated, but they were very colorful. And I know that those two may sound like synonyms, but they aren't, because the saturation of a color and how many colors you use can be completely different. I actually used quite a lot of pastels in this, and pastels are a very light version of a color that isn't super saturated, and is just they work well together. It's easier to match pastels than it is to match very bright kinds of colors. And so I'm going in with the shading here, and I wanted to match the blue with the red, because those are complementary colors. They're across from each other on the wheel. I mean, technically it's supposed to be red and green, but oh well. And so here I'm doing the shading. I'm doing a warm shading, and then it quickly switches because I apply an overlay layer of an orangey color, and I'm using blue and orange as red. Those are complementary colors. The warm colors versus the blue colors are a very useful color palette. I'm gonna keep this one brief, but this was actually a short that I posted a while ago, and this is kind of a ragtag character, and the colors for this one were easy because I used complementary colors as well. I used a bunch of warm colors and a bunch of cool colors together, and maybe it's not complementary, but it definitely helps bring things together if you use colors more than once, because if you only have a select group of colors, you can still make the drawing feel very vibrant, because if you use the colors in the right spots and if you use them multiple times, it can actually make your drawing feel more harmonious and feel just more vibrant as a whole. And so I even reuse colors for shading because I feel like it just brings the whole thing together. Sometimes I'll put an overlay layer over the whole thing just to kind of also bring it together again, because one thing you don't want your drawing is to feel clutter. You don't want it to feel very messy or overwhelming. And so you can see that I'm reusing the teal color, the oranges, the light beiges, everywhere. And that's what makes this drawing feel more together. I just analyzed this old drawing of mine, and after importing it, you can see the shape language. If I'm outlining the whole thing in red, and you can see the sharp angular because this character is supposed to be menacing. Looking at this drawing, it's a very round and friendly kind of feeling, and so if we compare the shape language, you can really tell how it affects how a character is perceived, and depending on how far you push that, it can create completely different art style. So this was the baby basics on an art style, and thank you so much for watching. You can expect more content coming out soon about this topic and the processes. So again, thank you so much. Please consider subscribing. I really appreciate it, and goodbye!